Last week, we saw a flurry of announcements. I don't think Minister Paul Goldsmith got to even sit down. He was forever standing in front of a camera making announcements by the government's plans to crack down on retail crime with a bundle of new measures aimed at shoplifters and repeat offenders. First up, there was instant fines. You know, if you steal something worth up to $500, you could cop a $500 infringement fee. Over 500, that jumps to 1,000. There's also toughening penalties, as an offenders could now face up to a year in jail for stealing goods worth under $2,000 and up to 7 years if it's over that. The new aggravated theft offence is also being introduced for cases involving threatening or disorderly behaviour, even if the stolen goods are under $2,000 in value. And on top of that, they're extending trespass laws, making it easier for shop owners and police to keep repeat offenders out of stores and take action when they return. These changes came off the back of the recommendations from the government's Ministerial Advisory Group on retail crime that was put together last year, I think around October. A whole bunch of people, good people that come from different walks of the retail world, whether they are owners themselves of shops, right up to, CEOs of retail like Caroline Young. One such member is Ash Parmar. You'll know him because we do talk to Ash because he gives us all the dirt. Well, not really. He's also a retailer. It's always good to catch up with him. Ash, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Leah.
My friend, I want to start. We don't have to walk through every single one, but I did want to start with the instant fines because when I spoke with Caroline Young, of course, CEO from Retail New Zealand, about how these fines would work, who hands them out, she did not know, and she said that was still to be worked out. To me, then, it's a bit toothless because we don't know how it works.
Well, logic would say we would expect the police to hand them out because they are the leading force in that regard, in terms of prosecutions and laying a charge.
Yeah.
So the small matter of detail remains, do we have the capacity for this to happen, right?
Well, that's not a small matter then, is it, Ash? Because retailers say they can't turn up as it is. So how are they going to turn up with their fine book?
Well, that's what I thought, could be the subject of our discussion today.
Yeah.
It's a big struggle, and all last week we've seen some really, really good announcements. A couple of them I was involved in, being part of that ministerial panel, and then there was a couple of other ones, around King Punch, I think as well. You can't sucker punch someone, and there was another one that, I forget. But a lot of it circles back, Leah, as to do we have the police available to come and lay charges or arrest people or do the follow-up that's required, and that's probably the next conversation we really need to be having.
Yeah,
is does anyone actually want to work for the police? The numbers. I've been watching like an eagle for the last 24 months on the police newsletter. I think it's the Police Association newsletter. They have this table in there, which I don't know if you've seen in the past. It basically starts from November or October 2023 to now, what was promised, where they're at, and it's a very grim graph, unfortunately, because it's gone backwards rapidly, and only now it's slowly going up. And at the moment, I think when I saw the June one, we are 455 cops away from that 500 increase.
Jeez.
But it'd be easy to criticize, the current police minister and everyone else under the sun. But the bigger problem is, Leah, no one wants to be a cop. Why would you? Just the way we've carried on here, criticizing the police, the way they get attacked, constantly getting thrown under the bus, but also just job satisfaction. If you take, for
Ash,
example...
we'll just actually, Ash, sorry, my love, we will get to some of these. And I just wanted to reiterate the other reason too is I did see an opinion piece that you wrote that you focused on the police and the challenges that they are facing. This is also why we're talking to you about this. In it, you were quite critical of the previous government's approach. What kind of impact do you think that their soft on crime stance have added to the problem we've got now, or the frontline morale?
Well, thing is, Leah, let's not sugarcoat it, okay? Why I started talking to you and then obviously started getting involved in a lot of this was initially ram raids and robberies.
Yeah.
And you talk to any number of these frontline police, the frustration they had having picked up these youth and adults, who've done a rammed raid, completely destroyed someone's life, the shop front, all that kind of stuff. And then they have to drop them off. And then the same kid is quite often the same night or 2-3 hours later or the next night out stealing more cars and smashing up more shops.
Yeah.
Surely no human can put up with that kind of stuff, that frustration, that, their hands are tied, they've got to do the job, which is understandable. They've sworn to the job, but that kind of stuff, that's got to have impact on you. And there's countless examples you can give from that regard, just that stupidity, you almost call it, of what's happening right around you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And the other thing that I wrote in my opinion piece is who we're trying to attract as the future cops is Gen Z. And we know these boys and girls are a lot more aware of their mental health and their physical health as well. So how do you engage some of these boys and girls to become a cop, basically? Because they're looking at all this stuff as well, right? They were watching the news, reading the stuff that's happening all around in New Zealand society. How do you encourage them to become a cop? On top of that, obviously, there's the pay problem as well. The more experienced people we have here are looking at pay and work conditions in Australia. Some have left. Maybe they will continue to leave. But our problems are not just around setting up another college. We can set up more. But if people are not applying and the job is not that great anymore, where do we go from here?
Well, you said that the graph was actually now starting to lift, and so, I mean, it's been slow going. Yeah, you're right. But I suppose with all these announcements that the government has done, do you think that would get the Gen Z, which is 13, what's it, 28? I'm not, somewhere around that. It's the younger ones. Do you think that could encourage them to want to become a police officer under this government because they believe that they are tougher on crime and it's a job worth doing now?
I would say yes, because any number of these new things like 3 strikes, less discounts, pretty much is every that sort of loop by loop, all those corners are getting closed. It's kind of like how far could the criminal run from the copper? So yeah, 100%, but that will have a slow flow-on effect. So I think the next sort of 2, 3, 5 years, we as a society really, really need to keep an eye on it, that we're supporting these boys and girls to get the, get the right level of people applying for these jobs.
You said in your piece that we needed a cultural reset, one that saw law enforcement as respected, resourced and supported. I mean, are you talking the public in general? Are you talking all of us? You're talking who's having the reset?
Yeah, I think it's all of us. I mean, at the moment, I'm the guy who talks about retail crime, but boy racing is becoming a huge problem all around the country, especially in the Waikato. And a small example I can give you, this doesn't take too much effort. You can go online and read a lot of these articles, and NZME journalists sometimes cover it. You've covered it on the show, We've got these boy racers ramming into cop cars, and they don't even get any punishment at all, just discharged without conviction quite often. That's the smallest example I can give you, and I hope you can pick up on the irritation in my voice, because countless times I've been on the other side of it where we're trying to help a retailer, they've had a robbery or stuff, and the cops have been busy, especially on Friday, Saturday night, chasing these boy racers. So it's kind of like, well, is that the next thing we do? We start rounding up all the boy racers, start crushing the cars, but
according to Mitchell, it is. That's what they've said they're doing. Actually, about that, do you, because you're in the Waikato, is there? See, we don't hear anything about ram raids anymore. Now, Chris Hipkins last week in an interview was very sarky about it and said that it just wasn't getting followed anymore in the media, but he's still saying it's happening quite a lot. Is that true? Is what you see?